everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. It's Wednesday. Whoop whoop. Happy hump day to you. Happy Wednesday to you. I hope you are finding this week fantabulous. Look, it's 11 o'clock my time, so we're almost over the hump of the middle of the week. But what are we doing today? As promised, another small project. It takes a little bit of time, but not too bad. You can get it done in a day. But it is this table runner, okay? Stars and Stripes, the First Lady's Stars and Stripes. Now the First Lady, I say that because this block right here is in fact the Martha Washington star. My favorite, absolute favorite star. And then of course we have our stripes in between. It's not quilted, and you will find out at the end why. But yeah, we're going to make this together. It's a lot of parts. Now, if you were to use yardage, I would suggest 3/4 yard of the red, 1 yard of the white, and 3/4 yard for blue. To bind it will take a 1/2 yard, and backing is 1.5 yards. Now, I used a fat quarter, okay? All of these came out of a bundle called Land of Liberty. Absolutely beautiful. You can find that in our shop. I do have some fat quarters left. I did use fat quarters, but you could use yardage. Absolutely, you could use yardage to get that done. But I wanted to share that I did use Land of Liberty to make this awesome table runner / wall hanging. So I will also say that each step does have different size blocks that you need to cut, or strips, hence the middle. You can take notes as you go, or you can check out the supply list inside our website under Inspirations. I'll put a link for that below. It is free, and it gives you the yardage, and it gives you the blocks that you will need to cut from that yardage. So that is available to you for free. I wanted to offer that to you so you don't have to remember. I'm not writing the pattern. I'm just giving you the supplies and the squares and strips that you will need to cut for it. So let's get this thing started. Let's make us some stars and stripes that we know our First Lady, our first First Lady would love. See you guys in just a sec. So we are going to start with the center. It is actually a pinwheel with split half square triangles. Now I debated, I thought about showing 2 different methods, but the other method, this is what a split half square triangle looks like, okay? So you've got half of the square is 2 triangles split down the middle, and then you have the full other side with 1 larger triangle. And this will form the pinwheel in the center. I originally was thinking I was going to show you 2 different methods. Well, the other method is not my favorite, and it has a little bit of room for too much error. And basically you'd be cutting up all those triangles individually and sewing the triangles together. I will be doing this block in another pattern later. I don't know if it'll be this year or not, but when I do, I will then show that particular method. But again, it's not my favorite because there's a lot of room for error. So what you're going to need is a 4.5 inch block of the light color and a 4.5 inch block of the dark color. Okay. And you'll need 2 4-inch dark colored squares. Now, believe it or not, this is the larger square. This is what this one is. So the smaller of the 2 is the bigger one on your half square triangle. And these 2 will form the split half square triangles. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take and put the 4.5-inch squares, right sides together, okay? And I take my ruler, and it has to be big enough to stretch across of it, and I line up my 1/4 inch corner to corner on the corners. And I'm going to take my disappearing water-soluble marking tool, and I'm going to draw a 1/4 inch away on this side, okay? And I'll flip this around. I'll line it up again, corner to corner on the light fabric, and draw me a second line. Now, because what we're going to do from here is I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch. You would think you would stitch on this line. Well, I don't. I actually stitch towards the center of the block, okay, on both sides. Because what that's going to do, when you go to flip it open, it will give you a little bit of room for error, okay? So I'm going to stitch on this side on this line towards the center, and on this side on that line, okay, towards the middle. All right. Now, because we are sewing on the diagonal or on the bias, I like to pin my fabric because it can get a little wonky. You don't have to pin if you don't want to, naturally, but it's just something I like to do. Okay, so I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew it up. All right, I'm going to pull the pins out because that'll make it fun to try to put my ruler on it. Now, you could do scissors. You do not have to use a rotary cutter for this part, but I am going to line up that 1/4 inch on very near the line. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm just going to cut down the middle. Okay. Now at this point, you want to take this to your ironing board, and I am going to press it towards the dark side. So let me do that, and then I'll be right back. So they're pressed, and I wanted to show you, this line will go away. That's my marking tool. Usually it goes away a lot faster, but I made it really dark because I was afraid it would disappear while I was doing the video with you. So we are going to then attach these other squares, and if you remember, these are 4 inches. This is 4, well, start at 4.5, but it obviously is just a tad bit bigger. So what you want to do is you want to trim these down to 4 inches. So the way that I do that, my particular ruler does have a diagonal going through it, correct? I line that up on the diagonal, and I put the corner I don't want to get, notice it's a little wonky. That's okay, we're trimming it down. If it happens to you, it happens, it's okay. But then I've got my corner lined up on the 4-inch mark. Okay, so that's very important. And then I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and I'm going to trim 2 sides. Okay. Make sure it actually came off before I move this ruler. Yeah, I knew it would be one little sticker. Okay. And that'll go to waste. I'm going to turn it the other direction, but I can still line up my diagonal. And this time, I'm going to have a 4-inch here and a 4-inch along that side. And when I like where it's at, it's hard for me to see here, I'm going to trim the other 2 sides. Make sure before I pull my ruler off that everything came off. Nope. Yeah, I guess it did. Yep, okay. That's all the waste, along with this. That's all we got, okay? So we trimmed it down to 4 inches. It looks gorgeous. You'll do that with the other one also, okay? But I'm just gonna show you the next step here. We're then gonna take one of the 4-inch squares, and again, we are going to mark a 1/4 inch line on either side from corner to corner. Just like we did with the white one. Okay. Now, what's important with this one, when you go to sew these together, the diagonal's going this way, so you want your next diagonal to go that direction. And again, you're going to stitch along the inside here of that line. So again, I do pin. I'm still sewing on the bias. Get them all lined up pretty, right sides together. We've got the angle going this way on the one underneath. We're going to sew along the opposite corners on the inside of the line. So let's do that. Whoops, sorry. So I'm going to line it up here. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be cut. I need a new blade, obviously. And this time, when you open this up, isn't that pretty? So you're going to get 2 of these. You want to do this with this one also. Do the same thing, okay? And we'll go to the next step here in just a sec. Okay, so here she is, all pressed. And I want to tell you, I pressed them all going towards the dark side, okay? The next thing is we got to square this up to be at 3.5 inches, okay? So again, we've got this nice diagonal line. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line it up along this diagonal. Now, what is really important is for the first cut, okay, half of 3.5 is 1 3/4, okay? I have a 1 3/4 mark, and I do have a little, you can't see it because of the lighting, but there is a little 1 3/4 tick right here, and I am lining that up on the point where the split meets between this one and this one. I got this little 1 3/4 right here, and it's so important that you do that. And of course, you want to line up along that diagonal. Once you think it's where it needs to be, then you go ahead and do the first trim, just like we did with the other one, okay? Oh, that's why I always check. All right, let's line her up again. Should have checked it. I didn't. I'm going to make sure that we are where we were to begin with. All right, let's try that again. Okay, how about now? Nope. I'm at an odd angle with the camera. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna turn it, okay? And I'm gonna do the same thing, but we already have a straight edge. So we want up here to be 3.5. That one looks a little crooked. We'll fix that in a second. Pull it down just a bit. Yeah, we'll fix that in just a second. So you'll notice I have like a little weirdness going on both sides, but that's fine. Pull this up just a tad. I hope I'm on because this angle for me is interesting. So 3.5, 3.5. I'm looking still at the diagonal, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut it. And this time I'll check. Yep, okay. Now, because I saw that little wonky, I'm going to do this one more time, going this direction. And I'm just going to trim it up just a little. There we go. So there we have it. Now, I wanted to take you, so you do that to all of your 4 squares. Now, when you do this, got little scrapplies everywhere. It's a mess, isn't it? I want to show you what happens. Okay. You will get mirror images of itself. Not a big deal. Okay. But what I wanted to show you, so I'm going to make this into a pinwheel. So this one will go this direction. That one will go this direction. Put all the whites inside. There we go. Beautiful, isn't it? Now, because we had mirror images, what happens is you have this larger square here and this larger square here, and the small ones going in the middle, where on these two we have 2 largers coming into the middle and the little ones on the outside. If you weren't too persnickety about it and you were okay, then you could just sew that together and be happy with it. However, we are making 2 of these, so we're going to get 2 of the exact same in that same manner. So what I'm going to do is I've already done my other ones, so I'm going to, well, hold on, let me think how this is, how do I get this here? Let's see. Because we have mirror images on all of them, you will have enough. Hold on, I gotta think about it now. That one's not right. That one needs to go that way. Okay, so if that goes that way, that goes like this. There we go. And not that one. Okay, then we have one here. And then this one should be, that one won't work. We got to make it go that direction. So one of these will work. There we go. Beautiful, right? Now all the large triangles are going in, along with the whites are going in. By making 2 of these stars, we're going to get this perfect in that respect. Okay? So the next thing we're going to do is basically what we have now is a 4 patch. So we're going to take these 2 and flip them over, and these 2 and flip them over, and we're going to take this to the sewing machine with a 1/4 inch seam and sew right on down here. Okay, put these 2 together and those 2 together. So let's do that. Okay, so here she is. Now it ain't perfect, You know, sometimes you win it and sometimes you don't. And I thought about picking it out and redoing it, but you know what? It was close enough for me. I'm good with it. It's going to be all right. But sometimes you win them and sometimes you don't. The next part that we have to do is build 8 flying geese, okay? So I need you will need 8 3.5 by 6.5 rectangles, and you'll need 16 3.5-inch squares, okay? Now, what I do is I take my my square, and I'm going to make myself a line. Now, I've done a video on flying geese, so if you want more into it, it is out there for you. But I like to line up my ruler so that when my pen marks, it's actually marking in the corner. Once I'm happy with that, then I'll go ahead and connect them. Okay? Connect the lines. Give me a line to work with. I then put it on top so that I have the line going in this direction from middle of up here, well, about middle, to the end, okay? So it's important that you get the direction correct. Now, because I am sewing on a bias, again, I am going to go ahead and pin it so it doesn't shift on me. And I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch on this side of the line. This is the part that I'm going to cut off. So I'm going to sew on that side of the line. And again, that gives me some room in case this material takes up some of the seam and I don't get the right size. This is giving me an opportunity to make sure that I am going to get the right size. Okay? So I'm going to take this. I'll be right back. Have you ever had one of those days in sewing where you just think, why am I doing this? Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff going on today. Look, I usually start up here, okay, when I sew, because it's more stable. I started at the corner and my machine started to eat it, so I had to cut threads and do it again. It really is one of those days. Okay, so what I do before I press and before I cut, okay, and I cut before I press. I'm one of those. I take my fabric and I flip it over to be sure that I'm going to be covering everything that I need to. If I see that I'm good to go, then I go ahead and cut. And what I do is I line up my 1/4 inch seam along my stitch line, and make sure you do this on the correct side. This is the outside of the rectangle, okay? And give it a cut. Now, I do not throw these away. These are a perfect match. So I will start using these as leader enders because I'll get some really nice half square triangles out of them. Okay, so those are quite large. So I don't throw those out. I will use these in another project. What fun will that be? And you get a lot of them. Okay, because we're doing this 16 times. So at this point, I'll take it to the ironing board, and I will go ahead and relax my seam and press it open. Okay, and this is what you're going to get. Okay, now the next one, okay, we have. Okay, we're going to draw a line now. Make sure, because they're all the same. I have to make sure at least I'm consistently inconsistent. Okay, so I'm going to draw now a line that goes this direction. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. I got all kinds of threads. You got to love this. This is a great project. It's very messy. If you're making a mess, that means you're having fun. Of course, then you have cleanup, and I don't know how fun that is. So I'm going to put a little tag here, see if it's where I like it. Go ahead and draw me a line. I will take this just like so. Let me pull that back down for you. I will take it just like so, And I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to stitch this time towards my cut side. This is my cut side. So I'm going to stitch next to the line on this side. Okay? So once you are done with that, then you have, whoops, a flying goose that is flying away on me. Okay. Now this should finish at 3.5 by 6.5. Okay. Now because I stitch on that, not on the line to give myself room, I generally have to square these up. Now when you do this, okay, what I will do, okay, I need to make sure that I have a 1/4 inch and that this is in the center. Okay, I have 6.5 inches. This is a 6.5 inch ruler. I have lined it up, so I have 6.5 up here, 6.5 down here. I have an angle over here that my ruler has, so I can see that that's coming through okay. And when I have that, you notice, well, maybe you don't, but I have a little bit over on this side and a little bit over on that side, and that is because I gave myself some wiggle room. Whoop, now I just moved it. So we're going to go ahead and flip it around now that I've moved it. It's over. Okay. Now I don't have the same markings, but I do know that my line is straight over here. I have this nice center line still going up the middle, so I can see that it's actually hitting up the middle of this point, and I can see that I'm at a 1/4 inch from there. So if I had to trim any off of the top or bottom, you want to make sure you keep that 1/4 inch. Okay, and I'm going to cut it there to clean that side up. And that is what she wrote to get those all. So you will need to do this for 8 flying geese. Okay, so once we get all 8 flying geese, you'll need 4 for each pinwheel. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So you put together 2 here on these sides. Let me see. Then you're going to do 2, 1 down here. I know you can't see a whole thing. All right, but then you will also need 8 3.5 inch squares, and they will go in the corners. All right. So what you have here is a 9 patch. All right, and so what you're going to do, let me pull this down a little, pick these up, push this down. I got a thread I need to clean up, don't I? All right, so you're going to first sew, let me pull that over, there we go. You're going to sew this row first, okay? So you're going to take your 3.5 inch square, you're going to go like so, sew this together, then add this one and sew that together. Then you're going to, after you get that one done, you will take the second row and you'll put right sides together, sew down on this end, over here, sew down on that end, then you'll have your second row, and the third row is just like the first one. So you have 2 3.5 inch squares and your rectangle, sew those together, and then sew those together. Now, I want to talk about sewing your second row together with your flying geese, and it'll help you with the further rows. So I'm actually going to take you to the sewing machine right now, and we're gonna stitch this together. Okay. Now I will pin. I will do it off camera because I can't see at this angle, and so you'll see the pins. But I'm going to pin here, here, there, and there. Now we do not have any matching seams per se. Okay. You have some points that need to line up. So what I do is I take, let me get rid of this, it's distracting. Okay. I have a point that I want to meet. Okay. Right, I hope you can see that, but there, where the crisscrosses of the seams go, there is your point. Now the back can be deceiving, so I put my needle in and I look at my front. If I am even, sometimes they don't line up like you think it should, okay? But my needle is coming out at the point. At that point, I am going to put the needle in at this point. So they are together, and I will pin on either side of this as long as the pin is standing up straight. If it's like this or like that or like this, I know that it's not straight. So you want to make sure that your pin is not wonky and it is straight, and then you can take a couple other pins and pin beside it, making sure your fabric is still straight with each other too. Okay, and I will have to do this again off camera because this angle is not working for me, but there we go. Just put another pin on. I'm going to turn the fabric. I'm right-handed, so all right. And then I'll feel comfortable. I'll leave it in there like so until I get there, just to make sure that it is still where it needs to be. And when I get right before this pin, I'll pull this one out. I'll cross over, and right before you want to sew, and it'll be right above that point is where you want to sew. Where those two seams meet, you want to sew right above it. And then I'll cross over and pull the last pin, and I'll finish it out. So let me go ahead and take you to the sewing machine so I can show you exactly how we get that done. I think that this is a better picture for you guys, what I was talking about. You want to make sure when I put my pin in, I put it right inside at that point. When I go to sew, I'm aiming to be right above where that point is. That way I know that my point on this flying geese will have a point. If you go too far up above it, what it'll do is it'll make that point float. I'd rather float than cut below it and miss the point. So you want to aim for right above where the crosses of the seams are. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to attempt to do that. All right. So get this all, hopefully I am past the odd day. All right. Now I'm going to pull the pin out. Pull this pin out. Okay. I'm just going to leave it there for now. I'm looking at it. Okay. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this. Now I'm getting close, and there is nothing wrong with taking your time. And I notice I am about to miss it. So I'm going to aim for it, and if I have to curve a little bit, that is fine. Pull that first one out. About sewed on it. Yeah, I'm looking real good right now. I'm going to go ahead and pull this next one out, if it'll let me. Okay. Right over top. Needs a little help. Okay, and then I'm going to go back on track. Come on, baby. There you go. That's a girl. Get in there. Pull this one out. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and cut threads. Moment of truth. Are y'all ready? Okay, I went a little bit above, and this is what I mean by floating. If I would have nailed it, I went a little bit too high. If I would have nailed it, it would have been perfect, okay? But it's going to float now, which is fine. I'd rather float my point than miss it. What I can do is I can actually leave all the stitching in there, send it back in, because all those seams are too high, right? Go ahead and drop my needle, do a quick back stitch. I'm on the original stitching that I did so far, but remember I took a little turn. Well, I turned too hard. So now I'm just going to simply go right where I need to be, back over it, and when I meet up with that stitch again, go ahead and do a back stitch, cut threads, and that's even closer. It's still going to float a little bit, but I just wanted to show you, if you don't like the way that something looks and you have missed something, but it's not that you have to rip a seam, leave the seams in there. Leave them in there, and you can go back. Now that's actually really nice. So you can go back in there and sew without ripping your stitches, okay? So I just wanted to share that little tidbit with you. So let's go back to the pressing board. I'm gonna go ahead off camera and get this block, the other side done, but I'll see you guys in just a sec. Okay, so you can see just how well this is coming. I went ahead and finished the other one, very happy with it. I went ahead also and have done these, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit. So when you get both your sides on of this center section, you want eye pressed out. Why did I press out? Because there's a whole bunch of seams already in this center. So allowing me to push these seams out, it helps make it a little more flat, because there's all those seams in there. Let's push those ones out. And when I did that, I added these on and I pressed those in, okay? So when I go to sew this on, I will flip this over, and these seams right here will nest very, very nicely on both sides. And again, you have that point with your stitching that you can see. So when I go to sew this, I'm going to sew it so I can see that crosshair, okay? And get right above it, like right there. So I just wanted to share that with you about the pressing. So I'll get this beauty done off camera. And you want to go ahead and make 2 of those stars, okay? So 2 of the blocks will be stars, and they will finish at 12.5 inches squared. And I would encourage you, after you get your 9 patches together, after you get your stars together, go ahead and square them up. Make sure they're 12.5 inches. Then the other 2 blocks are stripes. So we've got a red, a white, a red, and a white, and a red. I have 6 stripes, y'all. This pattern is a 12.5 inches on the inside before the border, okay? Well, in order for the math to work correctly, these strips are 1, 2, 3, 4. A white, a red, a white, a red. Those are 2 7/8 by 2 7/8 by 12.5. Okay, so you'll need 2 white ones. Well, depending on how you're doing this, you'll need 4 whites at 2 7/8 by 12.5. 2 red ones by 2 7/8 by 12.5. Okay, and then this top one is 3 inches. Okay, and that way, when you get everything stitched together, you will have a 12.5 inch square. And again, go ahead and stitch that up and square it when you're done, making sure. And you'll do 2 of these blocks, 2 of the stars. Okay, and then the stars will go on the outside and the stripes will go on the inside. Okay, so you'll have 2 of these together, a star on one side and a star on the other. And the other thing I wanted to say, because I know I have a lot of beginners watching, when you sew strips together, I started on this end and I stitched here. When you go to stitch the next strip on, you need to start on this end of the white and stitch that direction. On this one, when you're adding this one, start here and go that direction. And the last one, you'll go the opposite. And what that'll do is it'll help keep it straight. If you just added strips and you started to sew in the same end, you'll get a nice bend. I think it'll go that way. But you'll get a nice bend in your strips, okay? And we don't want to bend. We want it straight. So start on one side. Remember where you stopped, because that's the next strip's going to start on the end that you finished on. And just go back and forth, okay? The other thing I wanted to share with you is I pressed on this one. I've pressed going towards the red, okay? So this seam's pressed to the red, this one's pressed to the red, that one's pressed to the red, this one's pressed towards the red. Well, here, I'll just flip it over and show you. So all of these are pressed towards the red. On the second block that you make, you want to press them all towards the white. So when you line those blocks up together, okay, when this is together, you will have your seams nest when you're putting your 2 rows together. Okay, so on one I press towards the red, and on this one I'll press towards the white. And that way it's easy to remember, and they will nest. 12.5 inches are each block will finish at. You will have 4 blocks total. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get this done, because then I'm going to come back at you and just chit chat about, you don't have to do a border, but I'll share some tips on that for you, and we'll wrap this up. I'll see you in just a second. So here she is, all finished. Super love this table runner, which can also be utilized as a wall hanging. We'll talk about that later. But I wanted to add, this actually will finish at, after you get your binding done and everything, it will finish, if you're doing the borders, it will finish at 15 by 51 or 51 inches long by 15 wide. If you wanted to make it longer, add some stripes. Add another block of stripes. That'll make it another 12 inches longer. If you want to make it shorter, take one of the stripes out, right? So 51 by 15 is what we're looking at least what I'm looking at with the borders, okay? So we're here to talk about borders, and I've sewn on one of the bottoms. I've already done that. But I want to talk about how to do borders, okay? So I'm using a fat quarter. Yeah, I know at the beginning I gave yardage, but if you use a fat quarter, like a fat quarter bundle like I have sewn 2 strips together that I pulled off of this fabric bundle in the bundle. And then this is a leftover from the first one. Okay. So but the initial, I just sewed 3 strips together, and these strips, this border, when you cut it, it's 2 inches. Okay. So you have 2 inches long or 2 inches wide, and then I cut to the selvage. In this particular situation, I did cut to the selvage. So this is still longer than my quilt top. Now I will tell you, I did measure, and the quilt top is 48.5 inches currently without borders. And like because we squared as we went, theoretically you should have 12.5 inches wide all along each area. Like if you took a measuring tape and you just looked and looked, you should have 48.5 inches by 12.5 before borders or binding. Okay. But what I do with these borders, I actually lay this out in the middle. I find the end over here and I line it up straight with the end. Okay. Right down the middle. I don't do 3 different looks. I line it up down the middle. I'm not measuring. Now I have measured because I wanted to know, but I'm not measuring, guys. I'm going to take my fabric and I'm going to line up this edge of the fabric along the edge of the quilt. I'm folding it in half, and I'm going to actually finger press so I get a nice crease. I got to do this right because I'm actually going to use this to sew. I'm going to finger press it to give it a nice crease. I'm going to take my fabric scissors and I'm going to double check. Nope, I got to pull it a little bit. All right, go back down here. Now notice I have this, I could put this on my dining room table. I'm doing this for you. I have this table. It's just laying here. I'm not hanging it on a design wall. I'm not hanging it anywhere where stuff is going to be pulled. I want it to lay flat in the way that it would if we're stitching. And it's actually good. I like where the crease is, and I'm just going to simply take my scissors and as best as I can, cut a straight line. If it's not straight, it's okay, but I prefer a straight line. Okay? All right. So now I have this that matches the center of my quilt. I'm going to simply take it and I'm going to go right sides together. I'm going to line it back up just to see how this is going to work. This is all it is just a test. And I will tell you, it's a little longer, okay? This is why we do it this way, to find out. I'm going to take the same thing and make sure that maybe I didn't cut it right. So I'm going to go down the center again. I'm going to line this up on this edge. Make sure everything is lining up correctly. It's pretty darn close. Okay, so I know it's cut right. At this point, I'm going to take this long strip and I'm actually going to fold it in half. Okay, my 2-inch strip, fold it in half, and I'm going to crease with my fingers the middle. So when I open it up, you can't see it, but I'm going to tell you, when you do that, you'll have a crease line, right? Now, I've already done this too, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to take my quilt and fold it in half. Theoretically, it should be halfway on the seam. Mine is, okay? So that is the halfway mark. Ooh, let me just make sure. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, it's halfway. All right. So I'm going to open this back up. This middle seam between these stripes is the center. I'm going to take the center of my strip. Right sides are together, okay? And I'm going to line up that crease that I made. When I fold it in half, I'm going to line it up on the seam line that is the center. And then I'm going to pull it out to line it up here with my quilt. Now I need pins. This is at least 48.5 inches long, okay? Or somewhere around there, right? If you sewed perfect, that's what you'll get. That's a long strip. So anytime I do borders with long strips, I pin like crazy. All right, it helps dramatically. So I'm opening up my pins. I'm first going to take my midsection, that crease that I formed, and I'm gonna, it's on the seam, and I really don't want to pin in a seam. So I'm just gonna, hold on, let me turn this around. I'm right-handed and I like it on top when I do this. So I'm gonna flip my quilt top around. There we go. Looking for my crease. I'm gonna line the crease up with that seam and I'm gonna pin right next to it, because I don't want to pin in the crease. Now, at this point, I'm going to go to this end and I'm going to line up the ends. I'm going to make sure they're very pretty. Everything is together the way it should be. I'm not going to worry about what's going on in between right now, okay? I just want the end to be straight and the corners match and the ends match. Okay? We'll put those in there. Then I'm going to go, just because of habit, I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line up the edge. I'm not worried about what's going on in the middle right now. I'm going to line up the edge as best I can. And I'm going to pin it so that the edges line up nice and pretty. The corner looks good. The edge looks good. Everything looks good. All right, now I'm going to pick a side. I'm going to start with this one. I don't know why, just because. I'm going to make sure that my border is lining up with my quilt top. I'm going to take another pin and about halfway, which happens to be on a seam, I am going to put another pin. Now I'm not going to put it in the seam. I'm going to put it right next to it. All right. Then I'm going to find the half between that, and it's a guesstimate. It doesn't have to be accurate. Make sure that I'm lined up. My edges are lined up, and I'm going to pin it. Now, periodically, I will do, I think they're like piano keys, you know, like I'm playing the piano. I want these, I want my strip and my border to lay how they're going to lay, okay? I'm then going to find the middle between those two middles. Line up my border, and I'm just eyeballing it. Put another pin. Then I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to find the middle between these two pins. And I'm going to pin it. Then I'm going to find the middle between these two pins. It's a constant of finding the middles. And you want to start from the middle and work yourself out. Okay? So I had to pin it again. Now I got to find these. There's two pins here, so I need to find the middle, which happens to be on a seam. So I'm going to pin right next to it. And then I have one more middle, which happens to be on a seam. So I'm going to pin right next to it. Okay. If I feel this is enough, I'll stop at this point. If I want more, I'd find the middle of these two, 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 and I would work myself out in the middles. And you know, if you're just wanting to make sure there's nothing wrong, you cannot pin too much. These are 48.5-inch strips at least. Now, after you get this side done, well, now I feel like I have to finish this, so I'm going to find the middle of this, and I'm going to find the middle of the next one. And I'm going to find the middle of the next one. And I'm going to find the middle of the next one. Because it made me nervous. You know, we got to be equal here. All right. And the last one. Okay. Now I'm going to do the exact, oh, I got one missing. Hold on. Should have found that when I was going, because you want to start in the middle out, but it's okay. All right. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Okay. So I have, the strip is bigger than my quilt top. Okay. So I'm just going to do some piano fingers, get it to lay appropriately, and I'm going to pin in the middle. All right, then I'm going to pin in the middle of that, and I'm going to pin in the middle of this, and etc., etc. Okay, finding the middles. You start from the inside out or the outside in. At this point, it really doesn't matter, but find a middle and pin. Find the middle and pin. Find the middle, happens to be a seam, and pin. Find the middle, happens to be a seam, and pin. Okay. Once you have pinned, and like I said, there's nothing wrong with doing a lot of pins. I got a lot more over here, and I'll actually do the same that I did over there because I like it. You're going to take it to the sewing machine. As a beginner, I would highly encourage, even if you're not, it's a really good idea, whatever was bigger. So my strip was bigger than my quilt top, right? I'm gonna put my strip on the bottom when I go to sew, okay? Because why you do that is your feed dogs are grabbing that fabric, and that it'll help ease all of that fabric in where you don't have puckers. It will help you ease it. So whatever is bigger, if your quilt top is bigger, put the quilt top on the bottom. Mine is the strip, so I'm going to put the strip on the bottom as I sew, okay? Once you have all of your top and your bottom strips for your border connected, this is where you have your cornerstones and sashing. Now, I will tell you, I kind of struggled on how I was going to attempt to explain this. I cut everything, even if it's longer, because I have to figure out how long I'm going to cut the initial, right? I cut these before I added the border because I added cornerstones. So I basically took my fabric in the middle. There's a seam. I put the seam in the middle of my strip, and I lined up one end and I cut it with the top. It ended up being 12.5 inches. I've squared everything, and everything all, from this end to that end and the middle, it's all 12.5. So I have 12.5 inch strips that are 2 inches wide and 2-inch squares for the end. Once you have your borders on, you're going to be able to place your strip on the end here, okay? You will have nesting seams between the corner and your top border and your corner and your bottom border with these strips. They're 2-inch squares because it allows for the 2 inches that you cut your strips on top. It adds extra. It gives you the correct measurement. Like I said, mine happens to be 12.5 down the middle and on each side. And I'm just going to simply nest the seams. That's going to be my first focus. I want those seams to nest. Whatever's going on in the middle because of it, I'll do the same thing. If there's something wonky that happened, I'll piano key. After I pin the 2 corners, I'll piano key and start pinning from the middle out. From the middle, find the next middle. Okay? 12.5, theoretically, if you just want to cut fabric, theoretically, this should be 48.5 inches, so you should cut 2 long strips of 48 inches or put them together to equal 48.5 inches. This should be a 12.5 inch white strip with 2-inch cornerstones that will go on after you get the long strips on. That's theoretically. If something wonky happened, the reason I show you that middle is so that if you put on 48 inches, 48.5 inch strip, and it wasn't quite right, you may get some wavy. So this works for any quilt. Make it bigger, lay out the middle, line up one end, snip it. Do it 2 times, okay? If you don't have the cornerstones, once you have your borders on, you can lay a piece down. That's not my preference, and that's a whole nother topic. So 12.5 inches is what I had, 2-inch cornerstones, and I will add those after I have both my borders on. So I wanted to talk about that, but that's it. Okay, so once this is all done, I'm going to quilt it. Now you might be asking, what am I going to quilt it with? I'm actually going to utilize polyester batting because I've never done it, and I'm kind of curious. It's 100% polyester. It's a table runner, so if you use that, you're not going to get any puckering, and I'll talk about that in a few weeks. But this is a great place for me to experiment on polyester. So I'm going to use polyester, 100% polyester batting, and then I'm going to quilt it with a meander with open face stars. I think that'd be brilliant. It'll allow the quilt to show for itself, and then just give a little bit of pop here and there with some open face stars to keep with the theme, okay? But then after that, I'm going to bind this with you. And so next week, I will have this quilted, and I'm going to bind it with you. I'm not doing a typical binding. I am doing a way that you will not see the binding on the front of the quilt, okay? And we're going to add some hanging sleeve opportunities. So if I wanted to hang this on the wall, it will already be done in the binding that you won't see on the front. So it'll be a twofer. We're getting a twofer out of this one. We have a table runner and we have a wall hanging. Because, I mean, how cute would this be to be able to hang it on the wall? So it's a twofer. So I decided what a great opportunity it would be to show you how to bind where the binding doesn't show. What you will see are the borders and the quilt with no binding. So we're going to do that next week. I'm going to get this quilted. I'm going to get it finished first because I got to get the rest of the borders on. But get it quilted, and next week I will show you how to do that. So looking forward to that. Now, I will be on Facebook Live at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time as I'm here in Virginia. I'll be there for a live quilting and answers session, live Q&A. So if you have anything that you want to ask, or we just want to chit chat about the pattern, or any questions that you may feel that I didn't address here, you can always drop them in the comments below. You can always email me, or you can come on board on our Facebook Live. But yeah, so I will definitely see y'all next week, or I will see you at 3 p.m. today. Thank y'all for stopping by. I love this. I absolutely love this. I hope that you are inspired and give it a try for yourself. But until next time, guys, may y'all continue to be inspired, productive, and ever so joyful. Never stop believing, and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. Love y'all. See y'all soon. Happy quilting.